right, so the Cavaliers are now 15-0 on the season, the only undefeated team left in the NBA right now. They set a ton of records with that 15-0 start. I don't know all the specific ones right now, but just know they are up there in NBA history. One of the coolest things to watch this season as we move forward into like the in-season tournament and everything is seeing how much and how far they can push this winning streak. Like really in about 5 games, if they can get to that 20-0 mark, which could be difficult, but if they can get there, we're going to have to start putting them into some very elite conversations. They're getting there up in NBA history with having one of the longest winning streaks of all time. They're entering some extremely rare territory. I don't want to jinx it, right, and speak too soon, but very, very impressive start. One concept I want to talk about with this particular team is bench production. So it is very important for any championship contending team or any team that's aspiring to win a championship to have amazing production from your non-starters, or if not non-starters, maybe even those non-max player guys. So your role players, it is more than important to have amazing production from those sorts of players. If you look at Cleveland in this particular game, Donovan Mitchell did not play. And I know this was against the Charlotte Hornets, but the Hornets did come into this game with a bit of momentum. They're coming off of a pretty big win against the Bucks that they had, I think, Saturday night or Friday night. So Cleveland came into this game without their best player and got some amazing production from those non-max players and guys who in most situations this season aren't going to be starting. So case in point, Ty Jerome, he was amazing this game here for the Cavaliers. He plays a very simple style of basketball. Not flashy, not a high-level shot creator at all, not a dynamic scorer, never was really at any point in his career in college or in the NBA. Just keeps the game very simple, knows how to play, knows where to get the ball at. When he's getting presented with good looks, he's going to take them and he's going to make them. Very efficient player, one of the most efficient seasons of his career so far. Played an amazing game tonight here for this Cavaliers group. You also had amazing production from Georges Niang, who always has been a very solid role player throughout the course of his NBA career. Making sure that you are getting balanced production from your non-starters or your non-max players is more than important. And one of the most impressive things to me about NBA athletes is the ability to adjust and really seamlessly fit into varying roles throughout the course of the season. So if you're a bench guy and you're allotted X amount of minutes in a game, it is so impressive seeing a guy come in, knowing he's going to have X amount of minutes per game. He probably isn't going to close the game and still be able to produce at a high level within that limited slot of time he's on the court. That's one of the most interesting things in the NBA. And so when you look at these bench guys who may not be closing out games, who aren't starters, who aren't these all-star level players, it is so impressive seeing them come into the game, get allotted with like 18 minutes or so, and within that short span of time, do what they need to do to keep their team in rhythm and to go out there and produce. And we're seeing guys like Ty Jerome do it this season. As I mentioned, Georges Niang do it, and a ton of other guys. That's one of the most impressive things in the NBA is knowing that you're playing a limited role, still an important, but a limited role. And within that small role, within that relatively small period of time, you're still coming into the game and you are producing. I saw the Pacers play the Minnesota Timberwolves last season, and it was really impressive seeing TJ McConnell. He knows he's going to play X amount of minutes per game. Probably not going to close the game a ton of times during the regular season. And still, he's going to play at a high level for the amount of minutes that he is allotted in that particular game. That's what's so impressive about bench performance. Robert Horry talked about that before, how it was difficult for him to come off the bench and immediately get into rhythm. That type of stuff really makes you appreciate bench production, right? And also it's impressive seeing those guys be able to adjust to different roles. There are going to be situations where, like tonight, one of your bench guys is going to have to play a starter role and is going to get a ton of minutes. So to see Ty Jerome seamlessly adjust into that starter role, into somebody who essentially helped close the game out here for Cleveland, it was very interesting to see. That's one of the most amazing things when it comes to NBA athletes is their ability to fit within different roles on a night in, night out basis. So being available and being able to produce when your number is called, I know it's really cliche and it's very middle schoolish. That's something like your middle school coach will tell you, even if you're coming off the bench, be ready to come in and play when your number is called. But that is something that is very underrated and something that I don't really think we appreciate enough as NBA fans. You have to appreciate those guys. They're talented enough to put up 20 points per game for the most part if their coach gave them the time to do it. So the ability to put that ego to the side and play within a role and still come in the game and play well within that role, knowing that you could probably do more with more minutes, it's very impressive both mentally and from a basketball skill standpoint to be able to come into a game knowing you could probably play a lot more minutes, knowing you have the potential to be a starter and still adjust within that role, do what you are asked to do, be ready when your number is called, and play at a high level. So that's one thing to say about this Cavaliers team is on top of them just being a great team, you know they're getting amazing play from bench guys. They are coming in the game and they are buying in and they are fitting seamlessly into certain roles. So in a game like tonight where you're without Donovan Mitchell, to see Ty Jerome step up, Georges Niang step up, Craig Porter had some pretty good minutes off the bench here tonight as well. Very, very interesting stuff. Another concept I'm going to talk about, this is way far left from the subject I just finished talking about, is the zone defense. That was something that I really noticed this game for Cleveland, not just this game, but really they've sprinkled it in here time and time throughout the season. We're seeing a lot of teams run a pretty high volume of zone defense. And for the Cavaliers tonight, they closed the game primarily in a 2-3 zone. Now, what is the point of a 2-3 zone defense? Essentially, you want to limit the amount of paint touches for the opposing team. That is the sole purpose of the 2-3 zone. You want them to force up a lot of three-pointers, shots from the perimeter, but you want to do what you can do to make sure the interior is not penetrated, right? And I thought late in the fourth quarter, Cleveland did such an amazing job at limiting Charlotte's looks within the paint. Credit to that 2-3 zone defense. It was deployed at the perfect time. They ran it to perfection. I thought that was what was able to help them close that game out, was their ability to stick within that zone, shut down the interior, take Charlotte completely out of rhythm, which is another effect of a zone defense, is taking a team's offense out of rhythm. A lot of times, maybe a team is spending about, 5 seconds within the shot clock trying to figure out how they're going to attack a zone defense, because a lot of times they may not be prepared for it. But they ran that zone to perfection late in that game. It shows off their ability to communicate well defensively, their ability to shift into different defenses throughout the course of the game and play well within those different defenses. We've seen teams a lot of times maybe deploy a zone defense and it's a weak zone in the midst of a game just because the coach wanted to try something different. The Cavaliers came and played this zone and they played it to perfection. It wasn't like Kenny Atkinson just said, let's switch it up and let's go with the 2-3. They went out there and they ran the 2-3 at a very high level. One of the ways you beat a 2-3 zone defense is getting the ball to the middle of the floor, right? Probably having a big or a really good wing playmaker or whatever flash middle. A lot of times that's what collapses that 2-3 zone defense. But I thought Cleveland did such a good job at adjusting if the ball hit the middle. I saw a play where I think someone got the ball in the middle for Charlotte. Darius Garland, who obviously was defending at the top of that 2-3 zone, kind of drops back and picks that defender or that guy's pocket and ends up generating a turnover. They played that zone to perfection. If you look at the Cavaliers, one of the things they are great at this season is their defense, and seeing how well they adjusted into that 2-3 zone late in the game speaks to how great of a defensive group that they are. So again, love the bench production, love the production from guys who are mainly bench players who probably got asked to play a bigger role tonight, and how they were able to come in and rally around a game where they didn't have Donovan Mitchell because of rest reasons, and also to play defensively, especially of that zone late in the game. Zone defense don't automatically mean stops. Teams run zone and they're not running the zone very well. We saw Cleveland run the zone at a very high level late in that ball game. Finally, going to talk about an individual player, Darius Garland. I am such a fan of his game. In my opinion, I've said this before, he's one of the top 5 ball handlers of all time. In my opinion, as far as the ability to dribble the ball and handle the ball, Darius Garland is simply one of the best in the league at that. And he was so good tonight, stepping up in a game where Donovan Mitchell was out, in a game as the closer, and he has done more than enough this season as a closer. So it's not like he just did this because Mitchell isn't there. No, Darius Garland has done an amazing job at closing out games this entire season. His efficiency is off the charts. He is such a good shot creator and shot generator. Definitely an all-star. We knew he had it in him. Was an all-star once before in his career. There's a little bit of a fall off the years in between, I think 2022 and now. Great to see Darius Garland return to this all-star level. So amazing game here for Cleveland to push them up to 15-0. It was a very telling game because, again, you got amazing production with your best player being out. Donovan Mitchell is their best player. Donovan Mitchell has more than enough playoff games under his belt as a dominant scorer. He is their best guy flat out. So when he's out, to get that production from those other guys and still win this game and pull away in dominant fashion late in that fourth quarter, it's very telling. It's indicative of how deep this team is, how great their all-around production is. And like I said, we'll see how far they can push this winning streak at the start of the season as things get more competitive as we head into the in-season tournament. But amazing start. Kenny Atkinson, a great start as a head coach here with the Cavaliers. And I can't wait to see how much they can push this as the season progresses on.